China is threatening to retaliate if the U.S. punishes Chinese firms for doing business with Russia. Eunice Yoon joins us now with that story. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Joe. Well, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said that if the U.S. sanctions Chinese companies, that China would respond firmly and forcefully. Now,
The world stands at the edge of an economic precipice, as the two most powerful nations on the planet, China and the United States, are locked in a bitter, hypocritical standoff that threatens to upend the global order as we know it, both sides. While accusing each other of protectionism and economic aggression, are guilty of the same sins, the U.S. relentlessly slaps sanctions on China, all while China imposes its own retaliatory measures on American companies. The hypocrisy from both nations is glaring, and the consequences are devastating not just for their economies, but for the entire world. China's appeal to lift sanctions is laced with irony. Why should the U.S. back down when China itself continues to erect barriers for American industries? And yet, on the other hand, the U.S. plays the role of global protector of democracy and free trade, while engaging in the very kind of economic warfare it claims to despise. Both countries are playing a dangerous game, pushing each other into a corner, and the rest of the world is watching in disbelief. If you're tired of the endless double standards, the political maneuvering, and the economic brinkmanship that's about to spiral out of control, stay with us till the end. This is a story you won't want to miss. Hello and welcome back to Innovative Check YouTube channel, where we delve into the innovative and transformative projects changing our world. If you're new to the channel and enjoy learning about innovation stories around the world, you've come to the right place. Please subscribe, like, and comment to help boost our videos on YouTube. Trade tensions between the U.S. and China have escalated to new heights in recent years, creating ripple effects not only between the two largest economies, but also across the global economic landscape. These tensions are marked by increasing tariffs, technology restrictions, and a consistent back and forth over market access and economic dominance. Central to this dispute is China's call for the U.S. to lift sanctions that have placed immense pressure on Chinese companies, as well as the broader Chinese economy. China has framed its appeal as an effort to re-establish fair trade practices and maintain global economic stability. But beneath this appeal lies a more complex, and at times contradictory narrative. China's call for the removal of U.S. sanctions is not surprising given the weight these sanctions have had on the country's economic performance. Many Chinese industries, particularly technology-driven sectors, have felt the strain of U.S. restrictions on critical components like semiconductors and other advanced technologies. For years, Chinese companies have been at the center of U.S. national security concerns, and sanctions have been part of a broader strategy to slow down China's technological advancement, especially in industries that could have military applications. China, however, has consistently criticized these sanctions as being protectionist and contrary to the principles of free trade. At the same time, China's response to the U.S. sanctions has not been entirely passive. In return, China has imposed its own sanctions and restrictions on U.S. companies and industries, adding fuel to an already volatile situation. These countermeasures have targeted various U.S. industries, including agriculture and technology. China's approach, while advocating for the removal of sanctions, also demonstrates a willingness to retaliate against perceived economic aggression, creating a paradox where both nations publicly criticize each other's sanctions while simultaneously reinforcing them with their own retaliatory measures. This dual criticism presents a politically charged situation, where neither nation is willing to back down but both acknowledge the damaging effects of sanctions on global trade. The sanctions imposed by the U.S. and China, respectively, have led to disruptions in supply chains, increased costs for businesses, and uncertainty in markets. Companies operating in the global marketplace have had to navigate these complex dynamics, often facing higher prices for raw materials, delays in production, and fluctuating demand. Due to the unpredictability of the political landscape, China's appeal to the U.S. comes at a time when global economic interdependence is more pronounced than ever. The interconnectedness of supply chains means that disruptions in one part of the world can have cascading effects elsewhere. The tariffs and restrictions imposed by both nations have resulted in significant adjustments in global trade routes. Companies that once relied on Chinese manufacturing or U.S. consumer markets have had to diversify their strategies, turning to other countries in Asia or seeking out alternative suppliers in Europe and beyond. A critical part of the current trade tensions revolves around technology, particularly the growing competition between U.S. and Chinese companies in areas like semiconductors, artificial intelligence AI, and telecommunications, U.S. sanctions on companies like Huawei and other Chinese tech giants reflect deep concerns over intellectual property theft, cybersecurity, and national security risks. For its part, China has been developing its own technological infrastructure in response, aiming to reduce reliance on U.S. technologies and build a more self-sufficient economy. This tit-for-tat dynamic is unlikely to be resolved quickly, as both countries are deeply invested in maintaining and expanding their technological prowess. Just a quick reminder to hit the like button below. YouTube has been restricting my videos a lot recently because of bots, so your like does help out this video massively in terms of the algorithm in YouTube. The semiconductor industry, in particular, has become a focal point of the trade war, with U.S. restrictions on Chinese access to chips produced by companies such as T.S.M.C. and A.S.M.L. These restrictions are designed to prevent China from acquiring the most advanced technologies, which the U.S. argues could be used for military purposes. China, however, sees this as an attempt to stifle its technological advancement and has responded by investing heavily in its own semiconductor industry. Despite these efforts, Chinese companies still lag behind their U.S. and Taiwanese counterparts in producing the most advanced chips, making them vulnerable to U.S. sanctions. The economic consequences of these sanctions extend far beyond the tech sector. Both U.S. and Chinese companies have faced significant losses as a result of tariffs and trade barriers. U.S. agricultural exports, particularly soybeans, have been hit hard by Chinese tariffs, forcing farmers to seek out new markets in countries like Brazil and Argentina. Meanwhile, Chinese manufacturers that rely on U.S. technology or components have had to adjust their supply chains, often at great cost. The broader economic impact of these trade tensions has contributed to a slowdown in global economic growth, with both developed and developing nations feeling the effects. Politically, the trade war has become a defining issue in U.S.-China relations. In the U.S., both major political parties have adopted a tough stance on China, reflecting a rare point of bipartisan agreement. The perception that China is a strategic competitor and poses a threat to U.S. economic and national security interests has become deeply ingrained in American political discourse. President Biden's administration, while slightly more willing to engage diplomatically with China than the previous administration, has largely maintained the tariffs and restrictions imposed under former President Trump. This continuity in policy suggests that the trade tensions are likely to persist, regardless of changes in leadership. In China, the trade war has also been framed as part of a broader struggle for global influence. Chinese leaders have portrayed U.S. sanctions as an attempt to contain China's rise and prevent it from assuming its rightful place as a global superpower. This narrative resonates with the Chinese public, many of whom see the trade war as part of a long history of Western efforts to undermine China's sovereignty and economic development. The Chinese government has used this sentiment to rally domestic support for its policies and justify its own countermeasures against the U.S. If you are enjoying this video so far, please don't forget to subscribe, share the video and comment. Despite the tough rhetoric from both sides, there are also voices within both countries advocating for a more cooperative approach to trade. Many businesses in the U.S. and China recognize the mutual benefits of economic cooperation and have called for an end to the tariffs and sanctions. In the U.S., industries that rely on Chinese manufacturing, such as electronics and consumer goods, have been particularly vocal about the negative impact of tariffs on their bottom lines. Similarly, Chinese companies that depend on U.S. technology or export to U.S. markets have urged their government to seek a resolution to the trade dispute. The global business community has also weighed in on the issue, with many multinational corporations expressing concern over the long-term implications of the U.S.-China trade war. The uncertainty surrounding tariffs and technology restrictions has made it difficult for companies to plan for the future, leading to a slowdown in investment and innovation. Many firms have called on both governments to de-escalate the trade tensions and find a more stable framework for economic cooperation. While there is broad recognition that the U.S. and China are locked in a strategic competition, there is also a growing awareness that continued trade tensions could have far-reaching consequences for the global economy. As the two largest economies in the world, the U.S. and China are central to global trade and investment flows. Any significant disruption in their economic relationship is likely to have a ripple effect on other countries, particularly those that are heavily integrated into global supply chains. In Europe, for example, companies have expressed concern about being caught in the crossfire of the U.S.-China trade war. Many European firms rely on both U.S. technology and Chinese manufacturing, and the tariffs and technology restrictions have forced them to rethink their supply chains. The European Union (EU) has also taken a more active role in shaping global trade policy, seeking to assert its influence in negotiations between the US and China. However, the EU has also been careful to avoid taking sides in the dispute. Recognizing the importance of maintaining good relations with both countries, the trade tensions between the US and China have also raised questions about the future of the global trading system. The World Trade Organization (WTO), which was established to promote free trade and resolve disputes between nations, has struggled to address the current trade war. Both the US and China have expressed frustration with the WTO's ability to enforce its rules. And there is a growing sense that the organization needs to be reformed to better handle the complexities of modern trade. Some experts have even suggested that the U.S.-China trade war could lead to the formation of new trade blocs, with countries aligning themselves more closely with either the US or China. Ultimately, the resolution of the U.S.-China trade war will depend on the willingness of both countries to engage in meaningful dialogue and compromise. However, given the current political climate in both countries, such a resolution seems unlikely in the near term. The U.S. is unlikely to lift its sanctions on Chinese companies without significant concessions from China on issues like intellectual property theft, market access, and national security. Similarly, China is unlikely to back down from its demands that the U.S. remove its tariffs and technology restrictions. For now, the trade war between the U.S. and China shows no signs of ending, as both countries continue to impose sanctions and countermeasures. The global economy remains in a state of uncertainty. The consequences of this trade war will be felt for years to come, as businesses, governments, and consumers around the world grapple with the fallout of this unprecedented economic conflict. Thank you for your attention, and I welcome your thoughts and questions on this complex and vital subject. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to get exclusive videos about how phenomenally China is developing and growing its influence. Your subscriptions and likes motivate us to generate more content, so please keep supporting us. Check out this video showing on your screen right now, and I will see you on the other side.